Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to go way back and ask about the whole inspiration in the script and what that experience was like for you of working on the story overall and the whole development of the script.
All right. All right. Well, guide me, interrupt me if I'm carrying off in the wrong direction for too long. Deal. Um, I heard a story on the radio on NPR about this. There's a guy traveling through Central Virginia, talking about GMOs, and he met with this farmer, and he asked the farmer about the condition of the animals that were eating these GMO corn, kind of corn subsidies, etc. And the farmer told the young cub reporter not to worry too much about a cow's stomach, that it's one of the most toxic environments on the planet, and it could handle a couple of GMOs. And it just led me to wonder what an interesting kind of premise that might be if you've seen the film, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
So I was like, what? That's an interesting environment. So a friend of mine and the producer on the picture, Marsha Oglesby, was working in LA, and I was in there. I was in LA at the time pitching this very family-friendly film. And so I mentioned this to her over a drink. She kind of the story, what was initially, it was called Swing Low. And she's like, that is an absolute nightmare. And what a blast. And I was like, really, you think so? And she's like, yeah. So we went to Gersh, and they set it up. We had a director attached, fell out. We had another director attached, it fell out. And then I was pretty familiar with the story at this point. And Susan Solomon, my manager, is like, I wrote it. She's like, why don't you direct it? And I'd never directed a picture before. And I wanted one more. I wanted to produce one more picture before directing. I just felt that I needed some more batting practice. And I did and I do need more batting practice. But so I jumped in to direct it. And I know Bruce socially. I sent him a script, and he's like, this is pretty messed up. I'd love to be part of it. And it was a really good opportunity having him involved, because it allowed us to get Annabelle Dexter-Jones, who I was not friendly with at the time. I knew of her work, but I didn't know her socially. And then Robert Longstreet, who I have a lot of friends who've worked with him before, and I'd heard about him for years. But they're big fans of Bruce's, as am I. And they jumped on it. And we cast the thing in a month, and shot it in a month. It happened pretty quickly.
And also, like you mentioned, this being your first movie that you directed as well, and I wanted to ask about that experience and going from working on the script into directing, and just your overall experience of directing the movie as well.
It was a nightmare. No, I mean, in some ways, it was very challenging for me. I think I was very, very fortunate to have a cast that was really willing to work with me. They all knew coming onto the project, obviously, I was a first-time director, and I think that's a big bet that talent makes, not knowing, they're really taking a jump on the script. And I was very comfortable with them. The technical side of it is much more of a challenge for me. I was lucky to have a cinematographer, Christopher Walters, and some producers, Bennett Krishock, Heath Franklin, Marsha Oglesby, who had a lot more familiarity of more of the technical aspects. I've been a producer and a writer, and jumping in, I loved it. I ended up loving it. But it's hard. It's a really hard job. And, I have a lot of friends who've directed movies and like, never again, because you kind of imagine what you want it to look like. And that never happens. And I'm pragmatic enough, and I've been around enough to know, like, it's never going to look exactly the way you want it to. But sometimes if you're lucky, it can turn out to be something that you didn't have in mind, and maybe some of it's even better than what you initially imagined.
And when I was watching the film, I was interested in the fact that throughout the film, Harper, the heroine in the movie, really fights back and wants to get revenge instead of just getting to safety. And it's like a kind of a turn on the way that heroines are typically portrayed in films overall. And why did you feel that was important as well, to have the police at first didn't really believe her story, and kind of like turn the way that heroines like this are presented in horror movies as well?
Look, I mean, the nice thing about this genre is you can have a lot of fun. There's really, there's some tropes you need to do, I think. But it's pretty wide open department. And one of the things I actually thought was so bizarre watching some of these films when I grew up, like Scream or whatever, like, our joke when we were actually pitching the story, was like, this story is different. It's like, the joke was like, bitch, get the gun. Like, you watch these movies and the girl's like, ah, and runs away. Like, women don't act that way. They don't scream and run. And I'm not bashing the former films that have done it. Like, I get it. But I was like, wouldn't it be more fun if we kind of, and there was like, that was kind of the tone that I wanted to make in this film. It was like, yes, we do a lot of outrageous stuff in the story, obviously, but I really wanted to have it grounded, in a sense of reality, it being kind of spectacular, her story. Like, he doesn't believe her. He's like, she's wrapped up. She's been, as she could have been had a meth induced, issue. Like he says, he thinks the story is so whacked out. He's like, this is really hard to believe. Are you sure you're not, a meth head? Or I can't remember exactly what he says, but, and I just thought, like, having a realistic tone to it with a woman who, she's not G.I. Jane by any means, right? But she's capable, it's not the end of the world to tie a wire between two trees. You know what I mean? Like, it's not brain surgery that she's doing out there. But I just wanted to make it like, she's fighting for her life. Like, why would she just scream and run? Like, why would she fight? Everyone would. It's our natural, fight or flight. And then the other thing, kind of in that tone, which we were doing, I wanted to shoot it during the day. I didn't want like the spooky nighttime thing that we do. We wanted like the reality of the, God's green earth, smashed up. We kind of use this as like, God's green earth smashed up against man's ill will. So that had a lot to do with that tone of shooting during the day. Again, trying to strike a realistic tone. The violence that's in there is more or less realistic. Like, you could put a pistol of that caliber underwater and still fire it, so we tried to keep that very much in check, the reality of it. And I think that is the reality. Like I said, I don't think a woman would scream and run away, especially if she had a chance to get the gun, right?
And speaking of like those action sequences and the violence in the movie, I also wanted to ask about the stunt work and what that experience was like working with the cast to create the stunts as well.
So the crew and my team and Anna love to tease me that the one thing I did as a producer, not as a director, is the minute we started filming, I had our AD schedule. It was not the initial layout. And, everyone wants to shoot chronologically to develop the characters, and it never happens. You might want it to, but I threw everybody into the woods for the action scenes. Because by the end of the film, it's a marathon. You're exhausting. So I got all of the action done. I front loaded it when everyone was kind of nervous, especially me. So that's it. And Annabelle did all of her stunts. I mean, every single thing you see in there, even her hanging upside down, was this extraordinary stunt woman from this, I'm sorry, what are the zombie television shows on that huge hit?
The
Walking Dead. Yeah, she's a stunt coordinator for that. She's remarkable. We were so lucky to get her. She's an unbelievable person. Anyway, she did the stunts on the, swinging from the line. But Annabelle did all the other stuff that we needed, which included being on the line. And she got in the river. Like, that's her in the river, coming out of the water, walking through the river, running through the woods, like, and in these unbelievably uncomfortable boots, through poison ivy and ticks, and me yelling, like, do it again. She's like, what? And ATVs and motorcycles. I mean, like, all of that stuff, like where she's being chased on, like, that's live. There's no like, there's no green screens in this movie at all, other than the very, I mean, like, she did everything. And so did the boys. They did it all. She climbed up on top of that rock where the campfire is. Yeah, it was a gnarly shoot. I literally get teased to this day by my crew, like, I cannot believe we got away with that. And it's kind of the right term, got away with it. We just had a lot of luck. We had a lot of luck. Nobody got hurt. It worked out.
Mhm. And also, speaking of working with Annabelle and the rest of the cast, I also wanted to ask about that experience, really getting to collaborate with them, and maybe if you had any rehearsal time during filming as well.
They made what was on the script better on the screen, from not just their acting capabilities, which they made it because of that, but they came to me with better ideas. I don't think they brought an idea to the table that I didn't use. Robert cut out this whole monologue about the preservation. He's like, look, you got it right here with this one line. You see what they've done to their mountains in West Virginia? I'm like, you're right. So that was something, it was just, that was probably, working with them was the biggest growth I had in the storytelling. Did I answer that question?
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, with the movie being shot in Virginia, I also wanted to ask about that experience and being on location, and with a lot of the scenes being in the woods, and what that experience was like for you and the rest of the cast and the crew, being on location for filming the movie as well.
So, Karen, when we initially set the budget up, we had a lot more money because we had these, I don't know, directors who knew what they were doing, and we had a fun script, but in the end, we had some financial issues, which really restricted some of the, just restricted what we were able to do. So, I had, I guess, anticipated this, yes, being my first time at bat as a director, but not as a producer. And I'd shot a film in Virginia already. So everything that was in the script, I actually owned. Like that canoe, I owned the canoe. The truck was my truck. Malincrot, Bruce Dern's house, where she walks up and knocks on the door, and we go, "That's my house." Like, and the barn, that's my wife's barn. You know what I mean? Like that, and that the cars are my cars. I wrote it like a play. I think I read ages ago. If you want to be a writer, a playwright, just use the toys that you have in your house, the tools you have around your house, and so you've always got the props. And that's exactly what we ended up doing. Um, and then those were all the structures, but everything through the fields and the woods and the rivers, those are all my neighbors. One of our producers, Burton Gray, let us have his entire farm to run hog wild, which we did, with those motorcycles, with the ATVs, and then all the trucks and the cameras and all that jazz. So we really had what we called is a home field advantage.
Mhm. And speaking of working with the producers on the movie, I also wanted to ask about that experience and really collaborating with them and figuring out maybe the budget or how you were able to produce the movie independently as well.
So the biggest thing that happened to us we were already in principle. We were already shooting, and the main producer, Marcia Oglesby, who's an old friend of mine, who's the one who greenlit this whole thing and got everything together for us. We're walking back to the house for lunch, and she's like, "So I have some good news and I have some bad news." What's the bad news? She's like, "Well, turns out our principal investor is not coming through with the dough." But I had a little bit of an idea on this. There were a couple of wonky questions from this principal investor. I had a couple of ideas. There was a couple of things he had sent in advance that seemed a little odd. So when we were budgeting some of these things, we had padded it a little bit, including locations, which we ended up shooting, like I said, our house. So it was just, it was kind of catch if catch can, just working with what we had. And again, like I was saying earlier, the tone, the reality of what we tried to set, a reality-based storytelling, it was very realistic what we had to work with. And I was really lucky with my crew that they're like, we get it, we get it. This is not going to be, things are not going to run as smoothly. The prop that I was very blessed to have a production team that could pivot and jump and, climb underneath the issues that we had to get, and really kept it all afloat. And we actually came in on time and about $1 or $2 under budget, which is unheard of.
Mhm. And Also, I wanted to ask about the experience of getting to bring the movie out to the different festivals and really getting to see the movie with audiences, and what kind of reaction you received from the audiences who saw it at the festivals.
So that was, to be honest, like, so I wasn't expecting that. I didn't realize that the people that go, so I work for a film festival. I work for the Sun Valley Film Festival, and we don't show a lot of genre pictures like this, but we show loud ones. We'll show some stuff that's out of the box. Um, but I hadn't gone to like Screen Fest or Genre Blast or any of these things, like Fantastic. So like I had never experienced that, this whole unbelievable, like really, so we actually got invited to play at the Austin Film Festival, which was a big deal to me. It was actually the very first film festival I ever went to when I was a teacher living in Texas 25 years ago. And it was really an honor to go. And they gave us this great slot, and the programmer, they loved Annabelle. They're like, oh my God, this is like an Action Jackson with they loved it. I was so lucky. I'm still so grateful. And I just love that festival. They gave us this unbelievable slot. And it was at the Alamo Draft House. It was this big, beautiful theater and loud. And I mean, Karen, like people were yelling. I mean, it was like, I was like, what? When she was kicking ass, people were flipping out. It was so much fun. I mean, you've seen it. It is what it is. But like being in a theater with almost 500 people, like the men were screaming. They loved it. They loved her kicking ass. So that was really fun for me. And then, we went to some of the other film festivals, like, it was just well received. Yeah, we won several Best Pictures. Annabelle, I think, won 5 Best Actors. Jacques Brockbar, the man who did our score, he won I think he won 1 or 2 Best Scores. We won a Best Edit. We won Best Cinematography. Like, it was really received well. And for me, again, it was just this very, it was just a delight. It was a delight to see people that love this stuff, like come alive. Like I haven't been to a film like that in 20 years where people are flipping out, and that we had made it for $1 in the woods of Virginia. It was so much fun to see these reactions. So it's been good. I mean, we're starting to get some reviews now where it's actually really interesting to see people like, well, this is unrealistic because of this. I'm like, wait a minute, no, you can't argue at that point. Like the gig is up, like it's out. The public gets to say what they want to say about it. But it's been that has been one of the most pleasant surprises of the film that I just didn't expect that. I didn't know that. Like I didn't think that I would. So, and we got invited to play at a bunch of them, and I tried to go to a couple, and it was a blast.
And now with the film's official release coming up in drive-ins and VOD, I also wanted to ask about that experience and kind of releasing this type of film with during the pandemic, not having like the official like theatrical release, but just your experience overall with like the digital and drive-in release as well.
Well, it's interesting because our distributor at Brainstorm, they're very clever. And they started booking the film in drive-ins back in May, and it was very smart. So it actually played this weekend in about 9 or 10, 11 cities across North America. And the American drive-in market's really crowded, but it played in Canada, and it did really well, that was another pleasant surprise. So they've been very clever. So it comes out this Friday on VOD, but it's getting some advance notice because it has been playing in the drive-ins, and it's getting pretty. I mean, like I have a lot of people that worked with me on the film are literally half my age. There's a lot of punky Brewsters that made this film, so they're on their phone all the time. Like, this conversation I'm having with you is the longest phone call I've had, in a long time. I'm not on my phone that often, but they're on it all day, every day, and they're like, "Oh, Teddy," they'll send a screenshot, like the tweet. The thing is, the trailer's playing on YouTube right now, and it went from, I don't know, like 1,000 views before the weekend, and now that it's over the weekend, it's got a couple 100,000, and people like it, people don't like it. So that's been kind of having this little pre VOD release, having this theatrical. People are talking about it, mostly good too. I mean, there's been some ones like, what? Most of it's been really good, actually. So that's fun.
Mhm. I think that was mainly it, but thank you again for taking the time out. I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you for watching Did you enjoy the film?
Yes, I did. I thought it was really interesting. I really liked the different perspective on like the lead character and the heroine overall, and just the way like you presented her and the way that she fought back. So I really enjoyed it overall.
Well, Karen, we're actually we're gearing up to shoot another revenge thriller, a little different than this and a little louder in some areas. But if there's anything like, you could tell me now or send me an email. But like, I I am really grateful to get people's opinions on things. So if there's something that you think that I might want to going into this next film that maybe I didn't do that well on Ravage, I'd love to hear your comments. It's really important to me, and you'd be doing me a giant favor, and I'd be grateful to you if you have the time for something. Hey, you might want to reconsider this, or I really like this. Try to turn this up a little bit here or there.
Mhm. Okay, yeah, definitely. Thank you. Mhm.